Are you worried about today's dire financial situation?
Put simply, I would argue the Biden economic plan is working.
The storms on Wall Street continue today after regulators seized the assets of Silicon Valley Bank, marking the largest bank failure since the 2008 financial crisis.
Do you worry you'll have enough to pay your mortgage, pay your children's college tuition, enough to retire?
I believe our banking system remains strong.
Regional banks in focus once again today as the market digests the fallout of the First Republic failure.
You have questions, we have answers. It's the Gold Standard with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Thanks for joining us. It is the Gold Standard. I'm Jennifer Horn, and that right there is the very handsome and knowledgeable Ken Russo.
So great to be with you today, Jen.
It is great to be with you for the very first time together on the Gold Standard. And you have brought me into this, Ken, because there is a problem that's been brewing in this country for a long time, and that is we are relying on a system of paper money, and that paper money might be failing us. There's all kinds of stuff going on. The stock market going up and down. There's the threat that you'll have no privacy left with digital currency. Certainly, we have seen these local banks, regional banks that are starting to collapse, big banks getting bigger. And we wonder, all that money that we've worked so hard for, all that money that we want to save and use for our family, for our legacy, for our retirement, it may not be there anymore. Right?
Yeah. How do we get out in front of this, right, Jen?
Yeah.
You know, how do we attempt to explain to everybody out there what exactly is going on with our money that the typical news outlets refuse to talk about?
Yep.
You know, this has been building up since actually the 1970s when Richard Nixon took us off of the gold standard, and our money, our US dollar, which used to be backed by gold, was actually then temporarily backed by nothing, and we actually have a clip of that to play.
Yeah, let's go back in time to Richard Nixon, 1971.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculator. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
So take us through all of that, Ken, because this program, the Gold Standard, is for people who already have gold as part of their investment portfolio. This is also for people who are just jumping in, wondering, with things feeling so unsteady and uncertain, are gold and precious metals right for them? So take us through what we just heard. What does that mean when Richard Nixon says we're off the gold standard?
Well, that's a very relevant question, Jen, to everybody who is out there. Anybody who has a bank account, anybody who has a stock portfolio, anybody that has some savings. Mm-hmm. And they're asking themselves, why is my purchasing power dwindling?
Right.
You know, why did something that costs $2 10 years ago now cost $4? And it's the same product, or maybe even it's less, you know, as we see shrinkflation, mm-hmm. inflation, all these words that end in T-I-O-N.
Right.
But the
all the Asians.
Yeah, right, yes. But the fact of the matter is that when you have currency, which can just be printed out of thin air, mm-hmm. you know, to infinity, and our government has over the years said that, well, we can just print money out of thin air. We can just spend as much as we want. And there's absolutely no consequence, you know, for us to do that. Well, that's where we at Midas Gold Group would differ. We would tell you, Jen, that our money is continuously buying less because they're printing so much of it. It's a debt situation. It's a money printing situation. And now we have a system that's dying. Mm-hmm. And this system, Jen, started 52 years ago when that became a fiat currency experiment where all these different currencies were allowed to float in value against one another. And the dollar became the world reserve currency, you know, so to speak. And that's been a huge advantage for the United States over the last, 50, 60 years. Now, that's all ending. So,
and that's the scary thing, because I think people, especially in our country, we take a lot for granted. There are a lot of Americans who are not dialed into this process. We are very lucky. We are blessed to be living here. But when you say that that is coming to an end, what does that really mean? Because there are reports out this week, and we'll get into some of the news this week, but even you've got people who are normally very optimistic, like Warren Buffett coming out saying the gravy train may be over for a while. So what does that mean when you say it's coming to an end? What can people expect?
Well, that's a very relevant question, Jen, and a great question. But basically, it means that the system that the central bankers have created and the politicians of just spending and money printing, it's come to a point where it almost feels like we're coming to a head. That something is going to happen, as we see with these banks that are going down. This is just not an isolated instance. It's a debt problem. It's a problem of the monetary system being flooded with money over the last few years. All these decisions by our leaders have created this big mess of toxicity that's just called our money. And our money, backed by nothing, it even says Federal Reserve notes right on the money. It doesn't even say US dollar anymore. It says Federal Reserve notes. Federal Reserve, our central bank, not even, a part of the government. It's a private corporation. What exactly is going on? How much of a mess is this, and how is it going to end? Now, that's where we kind of come in and say to someone, hey, listen, there's a pretty good chance that all of this can fall apart. Or maybe we have a utopia end. I don't know. I mean, that's for you and I and everybody that's listening out there to decide for themselves. But how do we hold on to our money, and how do we hold on to our investments and our purchasing power and not be financially destroyed when and if all of this comes down? And is it going to come down on purpose? Is the deep state behind this, or is it just natural market situations? But if it does come apart, and if our dollar almost becomes worthless or it becomes toilet paper, what could we do about it?
That actually had value during the pandemic. If you would have turned it into toilet paper for a little while, that was a big commodity. But I think what you're underscoring, Ken, is so important, that the paper money system is literally now worth the paper that it's printed on, because you've had Democrats and Republicans and everybody who gets into office making big promises and thinking that they can just continue to print more money, and that's going to be the solution to the problem. Everybody's been guilty of this in elected office. We had a big relevant conversation this week about raising the debt ceiling, but nobody seems really intent, even Republicans, on trying to cut and try to make more responsible choices with our spending. Ukraine's getting billions of dollars. We're just sending this stuff out. I mean, Janet Yellen, you can go back in time and we will here. So the answer is always just printing more money to fit all these pet projects that people have. Take a listen.
Our approach had two main pillars. First, we worked with the Federal Reserve and FDIC to protect all depositors in the resolutions of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. The steps we took were not focused on aiding specific banks or classes of banks. Our intervention was necessary to protect the broader U.S. banking system. And similar actions could be warranted if smaller institutions suffered deposit runs that pose the risk of contagion. I believe that our actions reduced the risk of further bank failures that would have imposed losses on the Deposit Insurance Fund, which is paid for through fees on banks.
So you hear that there, Ken. You hear Janet Yellen saying, talking about the banks and the safety of the banks. And this is a big one. People who have been following the news hear about in the last couple of months, 3 banks have collapsed. Literally, people wondering if they're going to be able to have access to their money, if all of that money they've been working for is actually going to be there for them.
Yeah, a few things about that, Jen. First of all, I find it pretty comical that every time a president or Treasury Secretary speaks about our money, it's always they're doing something for our good. it's for the good of the dollar, which obviously is good for the American citizen, or we're going to protect the banks, or we're going to make depositors whole because we want people to understand that we're there for them. It's just kicking the can down the road. And what does this bank situation mean? That the federal government is going to insure all of the depositors of every single bank in the country? And actually, let's take it a step further. This is a global problem.
Mm-hmm.
We're only talking about Signature Bank, Silvergate, Silicon Valley Bank shares. We're talking about Credit Suisse Bank, and most recently, First Republic.
That's right.
And it's not a coincidence, too, that J.P. Morgan and stuff comes to the rescue every single time. Why is it the same 5 or 6 big banks are coming to the rescue and the Federal Reserve? Because they understand, with all of the derivatives out there and all the risk, they have to keep this together, because once it becomes unglued, it's going to be devastating.
They're gobbling them all up. And why is it so? What we're talking about gold versus the dollar. Why is it more important for people to consider putting at least some of their money into gold instead of the dollar? Because for all the reasons we've talked about, the dollar is losing value. It's losing quickly. We don't know if we can trust the banking system right now. Why is it that gold and precious metals make more sense for people?
Well, Jen, actually, throughout history, there's only been one form of money that has survived in its original form, and that's gold. And we're not talking about paper gold. We're talking about the actual
beautiful
gold bars.
Sparkling gold.
Yes, the stuff that feels strong, the stuff that we could have trust in, the stuff that we know will always have some sort of a value. And during tough economic times, which we are headed towards, you want to have something that typically holds its value.
Right.
And gold has fit that bill, and you can't print gold out of thin air. There's no third-party counter risk. It's a medium of exchange. So how this all ends, I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows how money's going to look over the next 5 or 10 years, but what I would say is anybody that has any common sense, Jen, wants to have options, and they want to have a safety net. And gold has always provided that safety net, and I don't see why it would be any different now. But being as risky as we are right now, the most risk in history, the biggest bubble ever, I think we need to be more careful.
When economies fail, gold holds its value. 805-601-6000, MidasGoldGroup.com if you want more information about gold, precious metals, making them part of your investment strategy. This is a gold standard. We have a whole lot more up ahead. Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Dr. Gorka here. You're listening to The Gold Standard with your hosts, Ken Russo from veteran-owned Midas Gold Group and Jennifer Horn. Owning private money in the form of physical gold and silver is perhaps more important than ever to your long-term financial security. As U.S. banks fail, the Biden administration sends hundreds of billions abroad while depleting our strategic oil reserves. However, the biggest financial threat may be coming from within: central bank digital currency. The patents have been filed and the big banks have released plans for implementation. Midas Gold Group sees tyrannical implications: the end of cash, the end of financial privacy, big government able to see your every purchase. Could there be ties to social credit? Hear more commentary on the political and economic issues that affect your financial security right here on The Gold Standard. You can create your own gold standard with a call to Midas Gold Group, 855-322-GOLD. That's 855-322-4653, MidasGoldGroup.com.
Welcome back. It is the Gold Standard for the first time together, and I'm loving it. Jennifer Horn, Ken Russo, together, and we are talking about issues, well, probably an issue that is the most important to at least one of them. Planning for your retirement, planning for your legacy, to what to leave behind your family, really just making sure that you can plan for an uncertain future. And this weekend, one of the biggest stories, of course, is that the debt ceiling. We have to raise the debt ceiling.
Again.
It's like raising the roof. And it's, what, 78, 79 times in history we've done this.
Let's make it 80, 90, 100. What's the big deal? It's just printed money anyway.
You got it. And so they bring in the brain trust. They bring in, I like to call him Chairman Joe, but Joe Biden, President Biden comes in, has a meeting with Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House. You've got Mitch McConnell in there. You've got Chuck Schumer. And between Chuck, Mitch McConnell, and Joe Biden, you start totaling up ages. I'd like to have that in gold.
Yeah, and it doesn't give me a warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that our money fate is in these people's hands, right? I mean, what are they supposed to do? I mean, they have to spend more. It's a system that's addicted to debt. I mean, what are they supposed to say? We're going to cut off all money printing. We're gonna stop the spigots. That's what it is when the money spigots are flowing, right? I mean, so what exactly are they supposed to do? It's comical. It's a circus show. But the fact of the matter is we can't allow that circus show and their bad policies affect what we have. You said, how do we create our own vault of confidence? How do we create our safety net? How do we create and protect our nest egg? Well, these are the reason why, folks. And this has been going on for decades. So it's not just recently, it's decades.
You know, and it's really, it is kind of funny. The more that you're talking to people, more people are waking up to the fact that the government in this country is not always on our side. And I think for such a long time, we wanted to trust that the government was acting in our best interest. But Ken, if the answer to every problem is to just turn on the printer, fire up the old laser jet, and start spewing out more cash, there is going to be absolutely nothing left. You don't have to be an economist to realize that's true. And they've been doing this for a really long time. Alan Greenspan talked about this. When was this clip from?
Well, geez, this is from the 90s, and they're talking about money printing then. So you have a bunch of Federal Reserve presidents that are just talking about the same thing and giving us the same reasons of what they can do, their solution.
Are U.S. Treasury bonds still safe to invest in?
Very much so. I think this is not an issue of credit rating. The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that. But there is zero probability of default.
Now, I think that I might be in jail if my answer to all of my collectors out there is, don't worry, Porsche, don't worry, Mercedes, don't worry, BMW, don't worry, I got this. I'm just going to print some money. I'll pay all my bills. I'd be put in jail for that. But according to Alan Greenspan and every other head of the Fed, you can actually be elected president. You can be elected to any House position in the Senate if you just say, hey, we'll figure out a way to pay our debts.
You could become a multi-millionaire on paper anyway. And that's exactly what's going on. While everybody else is being taxed and everybody else is suffering through inflation and a loss of purchasing power, I mean, these are the kind of people that are running the show.
Yeah, and it is tragic because you have people trying to act in the right interest, but until we're really serious about making big cuts, we are going to continue to have to print money, and that weakens the dollar, and that's why gold and precious metals become a great solution to give you something real that you can hold on to that helps you hedge your bet, because what we know about gold is we call it the gold standard. It is the standard. It is that safety. It is that consistency that the dollar is not these days.
Yeah, with Jen and Ken, which rhymes.
Hey, I know. I like that.
Well, it's a good point, Jen. And the matter of fact is that we have to do something about what we have and what we have left. Before you said big cutbacks, right? Well, if they do big cutbacks, the whole economy is going to crash, and so are the markets. If they don't do big cutbacks and they continue to print tens of trillions of dollars more, which they will, maybe hundreds of trillions, then we're going to have a bigger bubble. We're going to have more inflation, and our dollar is going to be almost worth nothing. So they're doomed one way or another. And the question is how do people out there, how do folks out there, how do they get ahead of this? All
right. If you are curious about the answer to that question, you need to call Midas Gold Group, 805-601-6000, 805-601-6000. You can go online, MidasGoldGroup.com, and check them out, MidasGoldGroup.com. Ken, you brought into studio. I love when you come in because you literally shine with gold. And today you've got in front of you the Gold Eagle, which lovely. Look at this. I mean, if you're watching the video of this is a sparkling, lovely coin. Well, can I touch it?
Yeah.
I wish I were a magician. I'm just going to slide that in.
Yes.
Now, this is beautiful. Tell us what the Gold Eagle is. This is a beautiful coin.
Well, it's a product, Jen, that will allow people to get the fundamental reasons of why you own gold. You know, a store of value, it's real money, it's who knows what we're going to have to do with it. I don't know. I don't think we're going to have to go down to the store someday and buy a loaf of bread with it, but
I hope not, but you could if you had to.
Well, it's good to have those options. I mean, and that's what it's all about. How are we not backed into a corner? You know, what is our money right now? I mean, if it's at the bank, is it's just digits on a ledger and you're not really quite sure what it is, and you move it around and you're not really positive what you really have? Well, in my opinion, that doesn't make me feel like I should trust it. So what could you trust to hold its value? Well, land is very good, you know, and as people start to take money out of these different markets, it has to go somewhere, and usually hard commodities is where it goes. And gold is very liquid. It's the closest thing to money.
Right.
So for somebody that's looking to have protection and somebody who's looking to make sure that something's there for their nest egg, to play defense in such a dangerous market, I just feel that they have to consider gold at this point. But not only that, how much money can you get out of the system while you still can? Could I still take my money out of the bank now? Could I still move my money out of a brokerage account now? Could I still possibly diversify? Because I have to be honest with you, Jen, I think there's going to come a point where we may not be able to move our money around.
And so you got to move it while you can, and you got to do it while it's safe and while it's right for you. And this is a great way to kind of hedge a bit, right? To have a little bit of your money in gold. What do you recommend for people who are just starting out? How much of their savings should be in gold?
Well, it's different, Jen. And what I would also say, too, is that we are going to be entering a system of monitored money, you know, in the next few
digital
months.
Currency.
Yes, it's going to be, let's call it monitored money. So you want to be able to make some of these moves before, you know, we're being watched about everything we do.
Right.
And the answer to your question, it's a little different for everybody. You know, we have some clients that might not have high living expenses at all, and maybe they want to have a significant portion of their assets in gold. But other clients are possibly different. So it's a little different. I don't think that there's an answer that just, paintbrush answer of everybody with a certain percentage. I think it starts with a conversation. I think it's very unique situation for everybody, and I think that's where the conversation starts. So I would just urge people to consider diversification, but more importantly, consider your privacy and consider getting some money out of this dangerous system while you still can.
We have got to, and we will in future episodes of this show, talk about digital currency and the threat, because there is a real threat of a social credit score. There is a threat of the government watching over every transaction. One great thing I've learned about gold is it's still a private transaction. You can have it completely without the government's oversight of you. That's important. And what's great about Midas Gold Group, Ken, is that people can call you and they can tell you what their situation is. You can make recommendations. You can have a conversation about what might be right for each individual person. Because as you mentioned, it's not going to be the same prescription for everybody.
Yeah, and our clients could talk to myself if they want. They can talk to other highly experienced traders at our company. We don't have a call center where we're just, hiring people to go through a script and promote products that are just beneficial to Midas Gold Group. We really do care and develop a great relationship with our clients. But more importantly, the importance of diversifying, the importance of privacy, the importance of financial freedom. It's why we do it, Jen, and it should be on everybody's mind today.
Absolutely. And ask about this little pretty gold eagle here. We like this.
Absolutely.
When you call Midas Gold Group, 805-601-6000, MidasGoldGroup.com, MidasGoldGroup.com. That is the place where you can get more information, where you can get that talk, that one-on-one FaceTime to figure out, with all the craziness going on, all the chaos around us, how can gold and precious metals protect you? Check them out, MidasGoldGroup.com. Ken Russo, such a pleasure doing the Gold Standard with you this week.
I can't wait to keep it going, and I'm enjoying it. Little sanity about our money, Jen.
I love it. Jennifer Horn, Ken Russo, thank you for listening to the Gold Standard.